Yeah,
Really
yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Really good. Well, what I wanted to ask you about, sort of, I suppose, first of all today was first and foremost, just to kind of introduce yourself. Just tell us more about you. Tell us sort of where your sort of background is, where you sort of come from, and what's kind of led you to here, really.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Ian Smith is my name. I have a management consultancy called the Strategy Smith, and I work with big companies from a consultancy perspective, specializing in growth, change, and mergers and acquisitions, and also working with small to medium enterprises and startups as a business coach, where they ideally get best of both worlds from a strategic consultancy perspective, but also as a coaching aspect to it as well. Recently, I'm also training project managers in the project management qualification and project fundamentals qualification, as well with the Association for Project Management. So what's led me to here is I started, although the Strategy Smith has been an idea and a concept for quite a while, it's still relatively new in its literal sense as a business. I started that officially in March, and it's going well so far. And obviously, the idea of working with startups and taking ideas into fruition is something that I felt was very synergistic with what you guys do, Alex, at the
Mm.
Spartan Danzig business. Having seen one of the investor days and the kind of world-class technology and innovations you have there, and the caliber of investors as well, it's something to be quite excited to be involved with. So that's what brings me here with you.
Excellent, fantastic. So strategy is it's kind of your main bag, would you say? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think the what the perception of strategy is something that I'm able to do quite well. And a lot of the time, I find that strategy is being able to understand what success looks like and
Mm.
draw a line from there to where to start from,
Yeah.
and build the steps in place in order to put it into action, to deliver a strategic outcome.
Okay.
Mm.
So what do you think therefore makes the I suppose the question I'm trying to sort of work out how to phrase in my own head is kind of what makes a good strategy and what makes a bad one? What are the things that need to be in a good strategy, and what are the things that you've seen in a strategy that just isn't working, that you would notice at right at the start?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, what makes a really good strategy is one that's been able to put into action, and one that has focus. And also, I would put a third point, that's you're easily able to communicate what the strategy is,
Mm.
which goes hand in hand with focus as well.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you were to go to a board or to an entrepreneur, and and he or she or they will have a number of ideas as to what success looks like for them, then already there could be a perception of lack of focus because they're
Mm.
trying to nail too many different things.
Yes.
Similarly, if you go to a board of leaders and
Mm.
they have different perspectives as to why their business is successful,
Yeah.
then I'm not saying every business needs to have that one thing,
Yeah.
but the majority of the time it is only one. It is only one thing, that secret
It's
sauce.
one key factor, you think? Is that, yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, ideally, if you're able to link that to customer value, so if you're able to discuss with a group of people that are all aligned as to what drives customer value, i.e.,
Mm.
why do customers take money from their pocket and put it in the business's pocket?
Yeah.
Why is that? If they're all aligned as to what that is,
Mm.
and they've proven it with the customer,
Mm.
and then they're able to communicate that to their people to understand what aids them and what inhibits them from delivering customer value, and eliminating the things that prevent them from delivering customer value,
Mm.
then the people grow and the business grows, and you're nailing profit and sales every single time, because you know that you're hitting those key points around customer value.
Yeah.
So a good strategy is understanding where the profit pools are, who those customers are, in those sectors or verticals or what have you with the industry that you're in, and then understanding what customer value is driven by.
Yeah.
Testing the market, asking your customers, asking your people as well, and then driving focus through the organization to deliver it.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy.
Okay. What about then? How do you approach that from the perspective of, say, like a brand new startup, then one that doesn't have effectively the proof behind the strategy? They're simply approaching it with a new idea, maybe a new way to approach a market, maybe a completely new market sector they're going for, or they're maybe even carving out a completely new product line or a completely new industry, as it were. How would you tell someone who's in that situation to go about developing their strategy when there's not really anything to base it off?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I ask 4 questions of a new idea, or a change or something, or an initiative, and it works out quite well with regards to innovation. The 4 questions are the question of value, the question of rarity, the question of imitability, can it be imitated, and the question of organization. So if you're able to demonstrate that the idea or the product or the innovation, the new piece of technology can create value and prove what value it will bring, not just to who buys it, but also to the business, then that's the first question that you need to answer. And how will that happen? And then the question of rarity, is it rare? Is it being done before? And if not, then you've got something that's valuable and it's rare too. Can it be imitated? So can someone copy it? Can you protect it with a patent or copyright or something like that? Is the barrier to entry low or high?
Yeah.
If the question of that is that it can't be imitated because it's only something that you have, then you've got something that's valuable, rare, and it can't be copied. And then organization, can it be put into an organization, or can it be operationalized into a business?
Yeah.
And having those conversations just with 4 questions, you've almost got a business plan.
Yeah.
As to how it's going to add value. No one else can do it, and it's rare, and you can make a business out of it and operationalize it.
Yeah. I love that. Those four points are really, really key, and I think that it's a really valuable question for anyone who's thinking about starting a business to actually ask themselves, isn't it? And how they're going to do that, because I think that for me and I suppose a lot of the startup owners that we work with, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that the answer to all of those has got to be absolutely 10 out of 10 for every single one. So long as you can answer them in a way that actually compiles together into something viable, then you can make something happen, can't you?
Absolutely. And I think that if you're going to be innovative, and I always talk about putting strategy into action. If you wait for it to be perfect, it will be too late. A lot of the time. But you're right, having the answer to those questions. If you're able to understand, what the answers are to those questions, you're able to put it into action, learn from it, and then start the cycle again. To continually learning, because it's not innovation if it's not actioned. It's just an idea.
Yeah, it's just thoughts and dreams, and the difference between hopes and action and an actual accomplishment, isn't it? That's where the difference lies. I mean, the question of imitability is quite an interesting one, because especially in the tech area, and I was actually having this conversation with a client the other day, that within tech, it's very difficult to ring fence ideas. It's very difficult for you to actually sort of patent an idea within tech, because all you can ever really do is kind of protect the way that your tech does it. And so if someone else is able to come up with the same end result by doing it a different way, you kind of don't have a way to ring fence the business idea. You don't have a way to stop the imitability. And the phrase we often use is how deep and wide can you dig the moat around the business? That's kind of the question. But if someone else can come up with a similar way a slightly different approach to doing it that ends up with the same or a very similar result, you can't really protect it. So with regard to things like that, I mean, you can, one of the easiest ones, and I think the area that's probably the easiest to speak to for most people's understanding is, say, that the smartphone space, for example. Apple were the first ones to really kind of launch a proper smartphone, as it were, or at least the ones that the first ones that did it in a way that reached the mass market. But then obviously you've got Samsung, you've got you've got the likes of Nokia. You did have BlackBerry, but eventually everyone worked out that they were terrible. You've got other phones that are around, and Android and so on as the operating system a lot of these work on. So they all came out and did a very similar end result with a different sort of approach to the tech. So if you're speaking to a startup founder, and they've got an idea that runs that same sort of level of risk, as that they can only really protect the way they do it, not the eventual outcome, how would you answer that question to them with regard to those 4 questions?
I would go back to customer value. So what they have created as a tangible product could be copied, but as you said, the way that it's delivered can't be copied. Because there's only those people that can deliver it in that way. And so understanding that there's a space between selling and buying, and it's understanding what that space is, i.e. the decision as to why it's being bought from the customer, and if they're able to continue to deliver it in a unique way that drives customer value, then it's something that can't be copied or imitated.
And I suppose in some ways as well that it links into the operational side of it, doesn't it? Because I mean, if you think about the again, the Apple and say Samsung one, for sake of argument, being the sort of big 2 players, the reason, if you get yourself an iPhone and you start using Apple's products, you very quickly, you can't really leave it, because all of your stuff is kind of linked in with all of their things, all of your apps, all of your data, all of your music stuff, all of your contacts and so on are all linked into your iCloud. And if you then decided to get rid of it and get yourself a Samsung phone instead, you'd have to effectively start all over again. And I think that's part of how you kind of balance out those 4 points, isn't it? If one of them is a low threshold, you can build it up with the other 3. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. If something's going to add immense value, and you're able to mobilize it and operationalize it quickly, then it might not be rare and it could be copied. But your kind of secret sauce is getting something out really valuable really quickly, and clean as a whistle in terms of operations. If you have something that's so rare and can't be copied, and you can't yet answer the question of how you're going to turn it into a business, then you yourself know you've got something still really powerful. So yeah, that's a great point, is that you'll be able to have more clear answers on 1 or 2 of the 4 questions, more so than the other 2, for example. You make a good point with regards to data and things like that with storage. That's a key area now in technology. Is one, there's, in terms of marketing sense, there's the battle for attention, but now I think there's a battle for data as well, and having that knowledge power and prevent customers necessarily from leaving the product, because, as you say, it will be the cost of change in terms of time and perhaps money is too large. So that's another way that you're able to, as long as it's ethical, to prevent customers from leaving.
Well, I think it's an important point for most people to realize, especially in the tech sector, that nowadays some of the most valuable commodity on the planet is data. It's the thing that makes the most money, and people are prepared to spend the most money to get the most relevant data to them. And And I think in some sense you could say that's always been the case. You know, the person who knew where to find gold was the person that had more value than someone who just understood that, you know, gold was worth something. You know, it's the value of data has always been the key, hasn't it? It's simply that we're now in an age where it's being aggregated in a way that's never happened before. And I know from a number of the clients we're dealing with, a number of the startups we've got in our books that are, they understand and they know that one of the biggest value adds they're going to have is in the data, because certain areas that they're going into, there's simply no one collecting that data at the moment, and that's data that's going to be able to add a value to other larger organizations, and so that's where they are actually building value within their business. You know, that's I think a very important point for most people to realize, is that's where the real key comes in, and which is why, you know, fairly new disciplines like data science and things like that are now very very highly respected and very highly sought after, aren't they? Because of how they interact with the modern technical age. Yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, with that all in mind, tell me sort of tell me your kind of your sort of favorite story about a business that you've been involved in. What's the one that you would always pull out and saying that whenever I think about great things that I've done in business, what's the one that kind of comes to you?
Wow, there's been quite a lot. So my background has been in a big corporate business, and so my task was to work across a lot of verticals and deliver best practice across lots of industry sectors. That would probably be one of my key tasks, because what I was able to do was create a global network of expertise. And it also almost ran as its own business. And that was, in effect, from the beginning, an idea, and able to build it into a global network to deliver key initiatives into some of the big clients like Unilever and AstraZeneca, some of the other big FMCG and pharma clients like GSK and stuff like that. And they were able to ask us some specific questions, and we were able to mobilize big projects to deliver seven-figure fees for the businesses. And it was my role to lead those expert networks. I think that one stood out for me because it was so powerful to be able to, you know, mobilize something globally within a week and get something done very quickly. And it demonstrates the power of networks as well, whether it's regional, in-country, national, international, etc.
Yes.
And then my last project was a buy and build strategy in mergers and acquisitions, and that was to stand up a large renewables capability within the business. So my job was to look at our most profitable services within the business that were most resilient through the pandemic, and we realized that services that were related to physical objects, as in air conditioning, walls, floors, windows, etc. They obviously still needed to be fixed because it was a facilities management company, and we delivered food as well into obviously people. So in the pandemic, the people all went, and the food services, for example, were the least resilient, to kind of simplify it. But what I also found was there's a major initiative, the energy transition, for businesses to be much more sustainable, hit carbon neutral targets and things like that. And what we were able to do was quickly mobilize with a global capability to go in and build solar farms for businesses. So for our large oil, gas and mining clients, we were able to go in, deliver commercial solar solutions for them to meet their carbon commitments. And yeah, we were able to maintain wind farms as well. And that spanned from Houston to Melbourne with a central hub we had one in the UK and one in Norway as well. So that was my favorite one, was to be able to start from the strategy from right from the beginning and build it into a large business. More recently, to give you something completely contrasting, I'm working with some dental technicians
Okay.
to devise their strategy. So from one end, in terms of scale and geographic footprint, to working with a wonderful small to medium enterprise to devise their strategy, their people engagement focus, and customer value focus as well. So
okay. And are those sort of small independent dentists, or are they sort of chain ones, or what kind of things are they?
well, they're technicians, so
Okay.
they have labs, and they're obviously regulated by the Dental Technician Authority, and their clients are dentists. So when the dentist will design and create and say you need certain things, then they'll go to a dental technician's practice and a lab, and that's where it's made.
Okay.
In terms of crowns, implants, and things like that.
Okay, fantastic, excellent. It's interesting, isn't it? It's one of these things that until you get into certain industries, until you start learning about certain industry, you never even sort of contemplate that certain elements of it exist. Do you? When you I know from past experiences that we've got a startup that we're working with, and suddenly there's a whole new industry that's there that on a day-to-day basis you'd never have considered actually was there and actually was required. But there's layer upon layer upon layer of business and service delivery and so on throughout everything, isn't it? And I think that's a good way to think about organizations and startups and so on in general, and businesses, isn't it? It's that you're building something that fits within a layer somewhere within within an industry of some sort, whether that's at the customer facing end or at the business facing end, or somewhere in between, doing a bit of both. Have you worked with more sort of B2B, B2C? Where have you spent most of your time?
A lot of it has been B2B. So working directly with clients, but within another business. And then effectively business to consumer is where I'm working more so with the smaller small to medium enterprise businesses. So there's been a couple where one is we'll call them company A, we're working with to get them sale ready. That was kind of B2C in terms of my approach, because it's more direct with the business owners in terms of the way that I'm working with them. But then B2B is kind of what I'm used to as well. Going in, working with the groups of leaders, or working with the entrepreneurs themselves, but then taking their business forward with them. Excuse me.
What do you think is the thing that you most enjoy about working with sort of founders, entrepreneurs, and business leaders of that nature in that sort of early stage? What's your kind of favorite thing about that?
It's the excitement of the whole thing. Everyone's incredibly passionate to drive something forward, and the kind of the aspirations as to what could be are really exciting. And then being able to, like I say, devise what success looks like. And once you're able to understand that, you can then backtrack and draw the steps in reverse to move forward. And that's the part that I enjoy the most, is the innovation, the ideas, and the excitement and passion behind the business, and the idea of what the business could be. And then where I kind of come into my own, if I do say so myself, is being able to draw that direct line, just that plan to put into action.
Absolutely. Well, your talent dynamic profile is sort of mechanic is your sort of main thing, which is and that is the profile that's associated with that kind of that making things work in processing and an idea from an idea into a final piece, and so you know, you're from that perspective, you're a very good person to sit alongside most founders. Most founders fit into the sort of neighboring profile, which is the one that I fit into, which is the creator profile. You know, they're very ideas driven people, but when it actually comes to the real detail of making those ideas happen, that's where there's often a bit of the struggle. And so, you know, those things fit together very nicely, actually, having someone with the not just the knowledge and the know-how and the experience in it, but someone who's kind of almost like personally intimately connected with that, and that approach, and that general you know, that talent being your sort of primary talent profile, is that you know, that's the thing that sort of fits really nicely alongside. And I think that's something that, it's the reason we do those. It's the reason we do those talent dynamic profiles, because they really help both us and the founders understand each other, help them understand themselves, and help them see where they're going to need the backup and the support. You know, I as I say, I'm very high into the creator one. I mean, my secondary profile is star, which is the more sort of, you know, very happy to be sort of front facing and that sort of person. And then my tertiary profile is mechanic, that's the lower end of my talent profile, is that that's probably the one that I can do to a degree, but it's not where my primary talent lies. But where I absolutely need the help and I need the backup and the support is without doubt in the sort of details end of things, and it's very common for that to be a creator trend, and most creators tend to be the people that go and become entrepreneurs and start businesses. It's you know, they're very often the founders are creator people. And so I found that you know, when I recruit and when I'm looking for people to join the team and so on, the reason we build these talent dynamic profiles into that process is it helps us understand who's going to fit best and who's going to fit where. Because you don't actually want a business full of creators, because there'd be, you know, you'd sit around a table talking about ideas all day long and never get anything done. And equally, you don't want a business you know, full of detail people, you know, looking at the details all day long, but never actually getting any kind of direction going on. And that's where that's I think where you learn how to kind of fit these things together in a certain way. And it brings me back to a point that you touched on earlier with regard to communication and communicating those ideas. What do you think is the biggest challenge that sort of entrepreneurs struggle with as far as communication to their team and to the people around them, investors and so on? Where do you think their biggest challenge lies in terms of accurately communicating those ideas?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an appreciation that exists within an inventor to be able to communicate something very succinctly and precisely. One thing that I find sometimes quite hard is, so for example, I've worked with some scientists, some chemists and physicists in the topic of carbon neutral and things like that. And sometimes we forget that not everybody understands exactly what it is that we're talking about, because we live and we breathe it, and we might be technically minded, we might be PhD'd up with chemistry and physics qualifications and things, and we're incredibly clever people. I mean, I don't have a PhD, but kind of giving you the example.
Yeah.
And so I think for an inventor or for an entrepreneur, there's a need to put themselves in the person that they're presenting to's shoes, as if they were seeing it for the first time. How would you communicate? And again, don't want to labor it, but you can use the 4 questions. You can just explain how it adds value, how it's rare, how it can't be copied, and how it's operationalized.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're always going to be prepared for the technical questions because you're the expert. And sometimes when communicating that to investors, the investors might not necessarily be as technically minded as you are, and put yourself in their shoes. Now with your own people might be technically minded and understand exactly what it is that you're doing. However, if you're able to create a definite purpose a plan for the future, and core values, that should be very easily communicatable to your people, and it should be linked to the success of the business.
Yeah.
So I call it it's called the growth cycle, where entrepreneurs or leaders devise the commercial success of their business, they set targets in terms of sales, margins, etc. And then, understanding what success looks like, create a vision. So sometimes it can be used as a cliche or a fluffy word, but the vision should have, as I mentioned, definite purpose, core values, and a plan for the future.
Yeah.
Communicate that to your people, knowing that when your people deliver it, and you're able to evaluate their contribution as well through objectives and things like that, knowing that if they deliver what you've devised to be the vision, which has come from the commercial success of the business, as your people grow and deliver that, your business is going to grow.
Yeah.
So that's what I try and communicate with business owners who have small or large teams, is if everyone knows exactly how decisions are made, going back to the vision, they're contributing to the success of the business, and you're able to evaluate that and then reset new targets that are bigger and better and bolder. Then as your people contribute continuously towards that, then you can again reward your people, you can promote them, you can put in place succession plans, grow the team, grow the business. But know that unless you're able to communicate and engage with your people, they won't grow, and therefore they won't grow your business for you either.
Yeah. So almost what you're saying there is kind of aligning vision and purpose in every person that works in you. You've got to make sure that all kind of becomes part of the living, breathing, day-to-day entity of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And regular communication and engagement. Engagement is a key thing for any business, is knowing that your people are engaged, because you're able to easily change quicker if your people are engaged.
Yeah.
If you want to deliver an initiative, or if you want to change something and you haven't spoken to your people for a few weeks, first of all, you need to spend that time communicating what the change is about. But if your people are regularly engaged, then it's just like driving a car. If the car's moving, it turns easier.
Yeah.
But if it's stood still, it's still a beautiful car, but you can't move it.
Yes, yeah, and you've got to do that horrible dry turning thing where you scraping it around. It takes a long time. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So that's that I think is a really key thing for startup owners to understand, is that sort of communication element. When they're by themselves, when they're in that very early stage though, and it's literally just them.
Yeah.
What do you think are the key things they need to do in order to start moving themselves to a point where they can have a team around them? What are their sort of their primary steps, and what should their strategy look like in terms of making that happen?
I would always start at understanding your own value to the business. So when it's when it's one person, the CEO, the CMO, the CFO, they're all of these different disciplines within their business, and understanding from the beginning, what do they do that doesn't directly contribute to the success of the business, and that's something that they should look to outsource, or employ someone to do for them, so they can concentrate working on the business and not in the business.
Yes.
And when they realize they need more people, is when they're able to put plans in place and take action to drive that success, knowing that if they double themselves, then in theory their revenue should double. Or if they're able to recruit more people, what will be the increase in the value of their business by doing so?
Yes.
If it's a technology business, is the entrepreneur wanting to focus on code and algorithms, and therefore they need a marketing person or a salesperson to go out there and be that communicator.
Yeah.
Is this person incredibly
or vice versa? They're the one with the idea, but they need the coder in to help them build it.
Yeah. And essentially, it's their business, and what do they really love doing with it? Because the worst case is that they end up doing something that they don't enjoy doing in the business, but it's something that could be directly linked to the success of the business. So they need to bring someone in to do that as well.
Exactly, which leads us back to the point we were talking about with regard to the talent dynamics thing. It's one of the reasons we do it with the founders is so that we can tell them and they can understand as well where they should be putting their focus.
Yes.
What the thing they should be doing within their business is, so they don't end up being a square peg in a round hole. They don't end up doing something that someone else would be able to do better, quicker, and more efficiently than them, while they go away and did the thing that person wouldn't be doing better or quicker or more efficiently than them. So that's where I think that it links back to strategy, doesn't it? I mean, you meant we touched on it very early on, but about with regard to strategy, what would you say are things that you've seen that are put into strategies that are put in there because someone feels they should be in there, but don't actually really deliver? Because I've seen a lot of that, and I'm sure you have as well. So what would you say are the key things that those tend to be?
So initiatives. There's so many initiatives. If I was to go to kind of a big corporate example and then some small to medium enterprise examples, because I think the entrepreneurs of this generation are going to absolutely smash the market in terms of the bigger businesses, because in big businesses there are lots of ideas and lots of things that are felt that should be done.
Yeah.
And it mainly comes down to hubris. So being confident that this new initiative will help our people, without taking into account the impact it's going to have to deliver the initiative, irrespective of the help it's going to give the people once it's delivered.
Yes.
And these lists pile up, Alex. So I personally interview people on site right up to C-suite, and in this particular case, they were spending 2 to 3 days a week doing administrative tasks, whether it was hiring people, doing financial tasks, and those were days that they couldn't spend with the customer, delivering customer value.
Yeah.
So we were able to quickly cross off initiatives on the list, and the way that they were crafted to be delivered were that they were strategic initiatives, whereas they weren't directly contributing to the strategy or the success of the business.
Yes.
In small to medium enterprises and in the fantastic businesses we see now, I think that there are some cases where the leadership or the management have variable opinions on what drives success of the company, and then want to deliver a number of different things, and then sometimes silos or alliances can be formed in those sorts of structures. And being able to, for me, being able to go in and ask those questions to say, what do you think? And sometimes it might be the product that needs redesigning. Sometimes it's we need to ramp up marketing. Sometimes it's we need to ramp up sales efforts, all of which cost money to redesign, market, and sell. Why do all three at the same time?
Yeah.
Pick one, focus on it, set targets, test it, action, relearn, and then decide whether you can market it and sell it, as an example.
Yes. I think that's an important thing, because I mean, it's certainly a problem that I can personally empathize with. As a creator and as a creative sort of person, my my brain is very much the new ideas. Every time there's a new thing that comes in, the first thing I want to do is start working on that, start doing stuff with that idea. And I think in a startup space, and especially when you've got creators who are the heads of those startups, there's a very big temptation to just start trying to build Rome when it might be easier to just start off with maybe building a house. And I think that comes down to the strategy again, doesn't it? It comes down to how you set that strategic focus out. I understand as well from that perspective, is that there's the temptation to do that, I think, is rooted in a number of things, but one of them is kind of not wanting to miss opportunities. And so, you know, we've got all these opportunities, we've got all these things that we could do, but our strategist is telling us, right, we need to pick some of them and focus on them. But then what happens if we pick the wrong 5 things to focus on and drive our business that way, and then we realize that of the other 30 ideas we had, there was 5 or 6 of those that if we'd gone after those, we would have been well ahead. How do you talk to someone about that and help them kind of overcome that problem?
So I call it, and this isn't to sound flippant, but I call it the shiny penny syndrome. So we'll go after that shiny penny each time. The way I explain it is try and get one thing finished first, so that you know that it does or doesn't work. And also, you know, when you're going through that innovation cycle, and when you get new ideas that you want to drive and put into action, you must never lose that, and always keep a record. You should also learn how to fail fast and learn from it as well, and recognize when something isn't working. And so it's not necessarily a direct answer, but if I was to work with someone who had multiple ideas, I would go right back to why the business started in the first place, and what is the definite purpose of the business, and which initiative is more aligned to nailing that, and then take action on that, put in place a plan and a key milestone as to when to determine it's working or not, and put key success factors in place to measure the success of that initiative. And if it's something that you want to continue and then you want to focus on something else, then you can maybe get in some help. So you can focus on something else and someone else can drive that initiative forward. But it's really difficult to do everything at once, because you spread yourself too thin, and you might be in danger of never getting anything completed.
And I could speak from personal experience there. It's a very easy thing, and it's one of the sort of talent dynamic traits of creators, is that they're the best starters and the worst finishers. They're the best people at getting initiatives off the ground in the first place, but the absolute worst people at making sure they come through to fruition and they're finished off, because they're very to use your same analogy, shiny penny sort of people. It's like, oh, there's the next one, there's the next shiny idea that I've just come up with. That's obviously better than the last one because I just thought of it. And so the temptation is to pursue that, and I think that's probably where the importance of building teams around startup founders really pays its biggest benefits, doesn't it? Its biggest dividends are paid on putting the right teams together around people. I believe it's a Japanese proverb that says, if 2 people in business always agree, one of them is unnecessary. And I think that's absolutely accurate. You need people who are going to have differences of opinion. You need people who are going to have a different way of looking at things and a different way of thinking about things. And that's not to say you want someone who's always going to disagree with you, because that's just as difficult. You need a good balance of something in the middle, and alignment of visions, as you touched on before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Napoleon Hill calls it the mastermind alliance. And it's getting a group of people around you. And he tells this great story in Think and Grow Rich about his own mastermind alliance. And he had Napoleon as one of his chairs. And it was he would have these imaginary conversations, and anticipate how these people would challenge his own ideas and things.
Yeah.
But when you get, like you say, a group of people together, even a group of startups together, or a group of people for one specific startup, it's almost like invisible lightning when everyone's brain starts to twitch and connect. And when that mastermind alliance is formed, it's so incredibly powerful, because you'll have 5 different brains thinking about the same idea, and you'll be able to test and question, take action, fail fast and learn, probably within the space of an hour, and get so much more done within that mastermind alliance, and have those people around you who can support you, literally bounce ideas off each other. So it's quite a powerful thing.
It's a hugely powerful thing, and I think we spend a lot of our time with our startup founders in sort of coaching them and working with them and helping them on that sort of vision side of things, on understanding themselves. We do work with them on the sort of talent dynamics profiles, as I've touched on, but we also do values testing as well, to kind of understand where their personal values are and how those align, because and it's something I touched on in the last podcast with Alistair, which went live on Spotify today, by the way, which relates to values, in that no matter how hard you try, if you try to build a business that is not aligned with your personal values, whatever you do, eventually that business is going to become a reflection of you and your personal values. So you won't be able to not make it that will bleed through subconsciously in however way however way it can. You can't do anything about that. And so I think that it wraps into that whole idea of communication, the strategy of it, the alignment of visions, the alignment of purpose, and so on within everyone. And I know from experience that when you get into those conversations with people and you have those kind of, as you say, you call it like the invisible lightning kind of idea of people's brains kind of aligning. I believe anyway, and do a lot of work in this area, that this is directly related to what people used to call vibration, or it's like the universal energy. Effectively, what's happening is when people are sat around in a room and they're all talking about the same thing and thinking about the same thing, there is almost a group telepathy that is shared there. And it's something I don't think we quite understand still as a species, but it undoubtedly exists, that you can get people together, brainstorming on the same thing, and you'll come up with stuff between you that one of you sat down doing it on your own would never have done. Exactly. And as you say, Think and Grow Rich, which is a great book, and anyone who hasn't read it, I'd recommend they do. But he talks about there, doesn't he, as you say, the mastermind alliance around you, and he basically explains that pretty much all of the most successful men that he spoke to and interviewed and so on all had one. They all had a sort of group of people around them who were there, effectively their mastermind alliance, and help them kind of with bouncing ideas and running things through and so on. And I know, because I've worked with them before. I've joined a couple of sort of mastermind groups before, where that's exactly what they're designed to do, where a group of people who run different businesses come together and discuss their businesses with each other, and they are hugely powerful. They make a substantial difference to people, and they really do. They really do help you. A great example is the first one that I ever went to was, it's got to be, it's coming up for 7 years ago. It's six or so years ago now. I went to a session of one that someone had found and said, oh, maybe give this a try, and I just went along completely on the with no idea really what to expect. And there was a session in the afternoon where you were allowed to ask a question. It was basically went around the table, everyone gave their feelings and thoughts and feedback, and you discussed the question between everyone. And I started out by asking a question which was related to, right, how do I solve this particular issue in my company?
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it had gone round the table, the guy who was headlining, looking after the group, sort of the kind of coordinator of the group, turned to me and said, so now, having heard all that, do you want to rephrase the question? And I said yes, and I rephrased the question completely differently.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me at that moment, and that was the biggest sort of change shift in my mindset then, was that I knew that what I needed to do was break away from the business partner I was with and go my own way. And I knew that subconsciously, but I'd never actually been able to bring it to the front of my mind until I did that.
Right.
And so I know how hugely powerful these things can be, which leads me on to sort of the final question of for you today, is that if you were to give one single piece of advice to someone who came to you today and say, right, I've got an idea for a startup business, this is what the idea is, I think it's great, what would be the if you could only give them one single piece of advice, what would that be?
Wow. Yeah. So I tend to ask a couple of questions. So it's a great one. So I ask, where are you now? Where you want to get to? And what do you feel are the challenges from preventing you from getting there? And there's nearly always an answer to those questions that allows me to help them very quickly. If I was to give them some advice, it would be to take action. And get support when you feel you need it. Don't try and do everything yourself, and don't be frightened to ask for help.
Yeah.
It can be, as a consultant and having my own business and things like that. Without that initial mastermind and without that support, it can be quite a lonely place. And you'd never have any validation. In some cases, around your own thinking and your own ideas. And so if you have to question some of your own ideas, ask someone and get some support. Don't try and validate your own ideas, because they will just remain as ideas. Yeah. Take action, get support would be my best advice.
Yes, absolutely. I think I like the idea at the point at which you said there about validating your own ideas, because there are plenty of people who can do that. They tend to be megalomaniacs, or what happens is you end up in your own echo chamber, whereby you're like, well, is this a good idea? Well, I think it's a great idea, so it must be a great idea. And before you know it, you're 4 or 5 years down the line of your great idea. The moment you actually get some outside scrutiny, you're told this isn't a great idea, and that's I think that's really as a really valuable thing. And I do know that a lot of the clients who work with us come to us and work with us because they feel less lonely by doing so. They realize they've got someone there alongside them to help them kind of through it, and that, I think, is hugely powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the best advice would be to join the Spartan.
Well, we're not going. I won't necessarily keep the full plug in there, but yes, I like the idea. Where you go. Well, thank you very much, Ian. It's been a real pleasure.